Hey, welcome. My name is Rachel Smith, and this is the Natural Health Rising podcast. I am a certified functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner and the owner of Natural Health Rising, which is my online holistic functional medicine company where I help people who have autoimmune diseases, chronic illnesses, mystery symptoms, and a whole host of other imbalances restore their health by natural means. On this podcast, you're going to hear conversations between myself and other health experts on functional medicine and general holistic health. My goal is to provide you with the tools you need in order to help you rise to your healthiest and happiest self. So on this episode of the Natural Health Rising podcast, I have John Gusty with me. After 30 years in the entertainment industry, working behind the curtain for some of music's biggest names, John turned his attention to health and wellness in an effort to help his wife heal from what was originally diagnosed as multiple sclerosis. He soon realized that the same deceit and profit motive that plagued the entertainment media was even worse inside of the medical industrial complex. As a devout agorist and champion of individuality, he now devotes his time to producing content that celebrates the spirit of sovereignty in all aspects of life. Welcome to the show, John.
Oh, thank you, Rachel. Appreciate you having me on today.
I'm excited for this conversation because I was saying before, but your book, The Red Pill Revolution, is very eye-opening and maybe some would say a little bit controversial. So I love this topic in general. But I'd love to start off just briefly. In your bio, you say that you're a devout agorist. What is agorism? What does that mean to be an agorist?
All right, so let me answer that by starting here. Let me say that I'm not an agorist. Is about the most polar opposite of a statist that you could be. And for those that don't understand or have never heard the term statist, that would be just the belief in the state. So here in the U.S., that would be the belief in the District of Columbia, which is a corporate entity and has lots and lots of subcorps underneath it. And I think a lot of people mistakenly refer to that as government. It is not. I mean, they certainly do attempt to govern, but it is not true government. It's not elected government. You nor I have never lived a day on Earth in our lives where we have actually had a country, so to speak. The country has long, and all of the positions in a country have long since been abandoned. Just people will argue over the dates, but around the mid 30s, certainly into the 40s, when we came off the gold standards, it stopped being the United States, the area, and became the United States LLC. Incorporated. It became an incorporated entity, and so an agorist, it's really a subset of an anarchist. I'm at the core. I am an anarchist. I believe in two things: no masters, no servants, which I think is a pretty easy thing for most people to wrap their heads around. I don't wake up in the morning wishing to control you or anybody else, and I also don't wish to be controlled unless I consent to it. Consent. I'm big on consent. The other rule of being an anarchist is just adhering to the non-aggression principle, where there's never an appropriate time for me or anyone else to be aggressive towards someone else unless I'm defending my life or the life of, if a life is truly threatened. And so agorism, which was really started by Samuel Konkin, a lot of people will refer to him as SEK3, Samuel Konkin III, just a wonderful free thinker, hit the height of his popularity mid to late 70s. And he developed the idea of agorism. And agorism is it's just anarchists who want to organize under the guise of a fully consenting collective. So if you and me and 100 other people decide to organize and form a town or a city or a community, we would do so. Everything would be consensual. If you want to participate in something, you do. If you don't, you don't. And so that really agorism is just anarchy with a I don't know, a little bit of structure based on consent attached to it, if that makes any sense.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I am all about consent, and I agree. So in a world today where it feels like there's not a way with that right now, like it feels like there's a lot of rules and a lot of things that people are trying to force us to do. How could we respond differently when we've been conditioned this way?
Well, you conditioned. There's the magic word.
Yeah.
I think half the battle, and really the spirit of the Red Pill book, is unlike a lot of narratives that are pointing fingers, telling you you need to do this or you better not do this or whatever. What the book is really trying to do is to get people, all of us, any of us that think that we have not been conditioned or programmed. I mean, we're just fooling ourselves. We absolutely have. Anybody that has ever been a parent or been parented, um, would understand conditioning. I mean, anyone that's ever owned a pet would understand conditioning. We've all been conditioned. It's just usually, in a parent-child relationship, the conditioning is meant without malice and not for nefarious reasons. It's meant to form and push the child in a good direction, or the pet in a good direction and positive direction. But not all conditioning is good. Some conditioning is very dark and very evil. And yeah, there is a lot of dark, evil conditioning that goes on, in coming from the corporate complex, which is what a lot of people will call government. And you ask what we can do. I think the biggest thing that we can do is, one, recognize that it's there. A lot of people don't. A lot of normal, just normies walking the street don't understand how conditioned and programmed they are. And it's a big step for someone who is completely just lived their life just being controlled and told what to do by their fondle slabs and their screens, and what we can do is, one, recognize that we are being controlled and we are being conditioned, and then realize that um, we have within us such a simple but powerful weapon, and that is just the ability to say no. Just no. I mean, you and I can have the most beautiful, positive relationship, but if I am pushing you to do something that you don't want to do, or you are pushing me to do something that I don't want to do, we can lovingly and caringly look into each other's eyes and go, no, no, I'm not going to do that. And it's super easy to do, but it's a really hard step for a lot of people to take. And I'll just use this as an example. I've got, unlike a lot of people who started playing or even paying attention to the immune system viral game in early 2020, I've been playing it for 20 plus years. My wife, as you mentioned in my bio, was diagnosed with what she was told was MS, 20 years ago, and I mean, it's been rough. She hasn't taken a step on her own in almost 15 years. So we've been taking immune system, dynamics and blood and cellular behavior and all of that very, very seriously for 20 plus years. Really, I mean, just as a defense mechanism to keep her healthy and alive. And when all of this nonsense started in 2020, it was kind of easier for us to deal with it because we had way more experience in those realms than your average person did, just by default, because of what we've been through. But I never once, in all of this silliness, I never once put on a mask. I never once got tested. Certainly never took the MAGA jabs or the Brandon boosters. I didn't do either of those. And I'm not saying that to sound arrogant. Where I was going with this was, I never once had anybody, I didn't have any Karen moments. Nobody ever came up to me and yelled at me or scolded me or whatever, because I kept a smile on my face. And I had one instance where I was standing in the lobby of a medical center. We were visiting a friend who was ill, and we were there. And I had a lady at the front desk say, "Sir, would you please put on a mask?" And I just looked at her. I said, "No, thank you." Just,
Mm.
"No, thank you." I said, I'll go stand outside if you'd like me to." And she goes, she's kind of thrown. And she just said, no, that's okay. And that was in all of this 2020 scamdemic nonsense. That's the only time that I ever had any sort of an interaction that was slightly negative. It wasn't even slightly negative. She asked me to do something and I just said, no, thank you. And it, I don't know, I hope that illustrates just how simple it is to keep a smile on your face. You don't have to consent to anything that you're not comfortable with. And quite frankly, you don't owe anybody any explanations other than, no, I don't feel comfortable doing that. If I need to learn something more, or if I need to, further educate myself on a subject, I'll do that. But it's easy to say no. It's healthy to say no. It's safer to say no a lot of times. But I just don't think a lot of people, really, I know it sounds silly, but I don't think a lot of people realize they can say no to things.
Yeah.
There's weird social peer pressure that we just have to go along with whatever the narrative is. And 99% of the time, the narrative we're all supposed to go along with is commercially driven. It's coming out of some commercial complex somewhere. And I'm sorry, but, I don't know. I can't name one instance where the commercial structure, the status structure, the church of the red and the blue people, in my entire life, like, I can't think of anything, and I challenge anybody listening or watching this, like, has that structure, has it made us healthier? Are things less expensive? Are our schools more efficient? Are we less busy, less distracted? Is earning a living easier? Are we more self-sufficient in any way? Like, is shelter easier? Is water, food, cost of living, is any of that ever been made any better by this structure? And I mean, honestly, I can't think of anything that any piece of that corporate structure, that the status structure has done to improve things. Things have gotten more expensive. We're way more busy. We're way more dependent. We're less self-sufficient. We're not healthier. Our water's not cleaner. Our food's not better. Our schools aren't better. None of that stuff is any better. So to keep doing it, to keep going in that direction is it's odd to me, and it almost gets into cult-like behavior. Like, people who are still going in that direction, they to me behave the same way that we used to label people who were in cults, religious cults, because they believe this stuff. They believe that that higher power that they have their faith in, the state, is got their best interest, is looking out for them. And and it's just, again, if someone can come up with some examples of how the state has made things better for us as a whole, that'd be great. I'd love to know it, but I know I've been searching my entire life for some examples, and there just isn't. So hence, the only things I think we can do as individuals is be individuals and take control over what, we have a lot more control over our ourselves and our destiny than a lot of people give themselves credit for.
Oh, absolutely. I love that you said no, thank you in that example, like, very kindly. Yeah, kind of like that non-aggression principle you're talking about. Like, you don't have to start an argument over this thing.
Yeah.
And I love that you said that you don't have to give a reason, because a lot of people think that, or almost are forced to give a reason. Like, another example that came up in my mind when you were talking about that was alcohol. Right. So in my business, I help people get healthy. A lot of times they go down the path of quitting drinking alcohol, and then, they go out to a party with their friends or somewhere in public, and they say, "Oh, no, thank you, I'm not drinking." And all of a sudden everyone's like, "Are you an alcoholic? What's your problem?" And it's just all this finger pointing and pressure from people. And you're right. Like, you don't have to give a reason, and you just have to make the choice that's best for you in that moment in a lot of situations.
Yeah, and a lot of those social dynamics are so weird. Like, if you and I were out eating together at a restaurant, and I said, "Hey, do you want a piece of sushi?" and you said no, my next thing would not be, "Well, why?
Right.
Why don't you want a piece of sushi?" You know what I mean? But like, there's these certain dynamics in the whole conditioning that people were put under during the 2020 silliness was a really great example of that. I mean, a lot of people went along with things just because I don't know. I think a lot of it was part peer pressure. Like maybe they felt like, they weren't being a good neighbor or a good citizen if they didn't do what the corporations were telling them to do. But I don't know, if you'd have taken any of us 10 years ago, took us aside and said, hey, you know what's going to happen in 10 years? The corporate structure, which we all know is corrupt. We've never lived a day not knowing that the corporate structure is corrupt. The corporate structure in 10 years, they're gonna demand that you inject yourself with these things. They're not going to tell you what's in them. Oh, and you have to sign away liability. So in case anything happens to you, you get sick or you die, you don't come back and sue them. And so on paper, it's all going to be consensual, but you're going to be forced to do it, or at least shamed into doing it. Some people were forced at with their jobs to do it.
Yeah.
I mean, most of us would have gone, that's insane. I'm never going to freaking do that. No, but look at how many people did. And I mean, I don't even think we need to argue about, COVID. If I walked up to you and said, Rachel, here, inject this into you, and you're like, well, wouldn't your first question be why? And if I convinced you, oh, it's awesome, it's just this mixture I came up with, it's going to make you feel great, wouldn't you go, well, what's in it? Oh, well, Rachel, I'm not going to tell you what's in it. Oh, and by the way, would you sign this waiver so that you can't come and sue me if you die or crippled or or get paralyzed or whatever the ramifications? Like, would you even consider doing that? Of course you would not. But look at how many people did, and then now look at what is playing out, which is really, really sad. But
yeah.
It's like walking into an animal shelter. You can't save all the cats and dogs. You can't. You want to. They're all cute. They all need homes. They all need love, but you can't save them all.
Yeah. I've definitely, I don't want to go down too much of a rabbit hole here, but like, I definitely had clients come to me in the past couple of years who it was like, oh, ever since I got, that vaccine, I've had all these health problems and I don't know what to do. And so there's definitely been some crazy repercussions from that. But so does this choice concept kind of come from where the title of your book comes from, like the red pill? Like, can you explain a little bit more of that meaning behind that?
Well, yeah, I mean, it is, it's a just taken from the movie The Matrix, which, for those that haven't seen that movie, there's just a famous scene where the main character is given a choice. He's talking to a higher up, enlightened individual who kind of knows what's going on, and the individual gives him a choice. He says, you take the red pill, but if you do, you learn, you get to see the truth, all the good, all the bad, everything, and there's no going back. Or you take the blue pill and you just remain how you've been, and you won't know the answers to much, and you just live your life and live it out. And it's out of a mainstream movie. It's not the most obscure reference to name a book after, but it is an interesting fork in the road that I think if we all individually had that choice, what would we do? And I can tell you, I mean, even like my wife, if she was here right now, she'd tell you she would emphatically take the blue pill. She doesn't like knowing the ugliness. There's too much ugly out there, and it's just safer and more it's just easier to get through the day to just be kind of blissfully ignorant. And I get that. I mean, she's the woman that I love more than anything in the world. I couldn't be more like different than that. That's not how I'm wired, but I can understand it. I mean, I understand it in my own wife. I understand it in a lot of people. A lot of people don't want to know. It's just easier to not deal with it. And so naming the book that, like I said, it was just it's an interesting fork in the road that we all will find ourselves in, if we haven't already. And my goodness, if the last 3 years or so haven't shown us that, head on, I don't know what will. But.
In the book, you talk a lot about the topic of deception. So like, can you talk a little bit more about why you place so much importance on this?
Well, everything is marketing. Everything. I mean, relationships. A man meets a woman for the first time and is interested, and I mean, he's marketing himself and she's marketing. I mean, it's all marketing. We're all trying to make ourselves the most attractive or appetizing for whatever the situation is that we might be seeking. And we do it as humans. Animals do it. Animals market themselves to to each other. Commercial entities definitely market themselves and their wares, their goods and services. And it is hard, and this rubs a lot of people the wrong way, but it is really, really hard to have 100% honest marketing. You can't. I mean, that's why PR firms exist. I mean, when a celebrity couple breaks up, no one really knows the dirty details as to what happened. They have publicity teams on both sides crafting a narrative that best suits those brands so that they don't suffer any more damage than they have to. And so that's deception. And so there's a lot of there's marketing and deception go hand in hand. And deception isn't always bad. I have 2 boys, and I love them very much. Being their father is probably one of the if not the greatest responsibility I've ever been given. Deception is part of parenting. I have deceived them so many times for good. I mean, there's so many things they don't need to know, or I don't want them to know further. What I mean? There's things I want to keep them away from. There's things I want to steer them towards, things I want to steer them against. And so deception is a tool. It is a tool, and it's not always used for bad. Again, I use the parenting thing. Any parent that says that they haven't deceived their kids is lying to themselves. I mean, yes, we our parents deceived us. We deceive our kids. We've deceived our parents. What I mean? Deception is a tool that humans use to go through life, and it needs to be recognized as the agnostic tool that it is. It is neither good, it is neither bad. It can be used for good, it can be used for bad. But in media and in pop culture is created by the media. I mean, these media narratives are what create pop culture. The deception is overwhelming, and it is once you have deceived somebody or somebody's a group into believing something a certain way, or thinking about things a certain way, it's almost impossible to flip them back. So if I can deceive you for nefarious purposes, it's in my best interest to do so, because it would be harder to flip you back to not being deceived once I've deceived you. Does that make sense? It's like there's a famous quote. It gets attributed to, I think, Mark Twain a lot. Although I don't think it really is a Mark Twain, but it's harder to, it's easier to fool someone than to tell them that they've been fooled. Whatever the actual quote was, that the sentiment is still the same. And so deception is a huge tool. It is a huge aspect of life that we need to be aware of at all times. And that's why it runs. It's a common thread that runs throughout the book, because a lot of the things that we have been told, taught, conditioned into thinking, believing, and living are deceptions on many different levels. It's almost easier anymore. There's a lot of people out there that get labeled as nut jobs for saying this, but I think it's just a smart way to go. It's almost easier to just assume everything that we've been told is incorrect, and let's prove it to ourselves that it is correct. And it's almost like I don't have a daughter, but if I did, my advice to my daughter would be, assume that every man that you meet is got nefarious intentions until they prove otherwise,
Mhm.
and so I don't know. Yeah, deception's a big one. It's a big topic that I don't think it's talked about in the right way. I don't think it gets talked about in the agnostic way that we talk about it in the book. Like I said, it's neither good nor bad, but it's there. And in the media, in the corporate complex, it is there in just massive amounts. And it takes time and effort and tenacity to peel back all those layers of deception to get to whatever kernels of the truth might actually exist underneath all those layers of deception. I don't want to get religious, but I think every religious narrative has a bad guy in it, and whatever the bad guy is, and the bad person is in whatever religion you might be referring to, is always a master of deception. And so deception's powerful, just look at the whole topic of gaslighting. I mean, there's people who have been gaslighted their whole lives, and they're just living, they're not living in truth, they're living under deception. And so if people can just recognize deception, I think that's a first step in dealing with the deception, is just recognizing that you have been deceived, or even opening up your mind to the possibility that you might have been deceived. And that's hard for some people. It's hard for a lot of people.
I agree. I think it's powerful, just like you said, just to continue to question things and do more research on your own, and not believe everything that you hear all the time, and just kind of question things a little bit more.
Yeah.
Another dynamic that the book focuses on is understanding the difference between commercial and private in our lives. Can you give some examples of this and elaborate a bit more on that topic?
Yeah. So there's commercial and private also mirrors the difference between legal and lawful. People like a really good example would be, there's no speed limit law anywhere. There are no laws on the speed limit. There are statutes, but anything legal is commercial. Anything lawful is non-commercial. And so it is a speed limit would be a commercial statute or rule put up by a commercial entity, the town of whatever, the county of whatever, the state of whatever. It would be like, when you go into a Walmart, you are going into Walmart's jurisdiction. You're walking into their store. Now you're on their property, and you have to play by their rules. Call them statutes. Some people would call them laws. But if we're being literal with our words, law is one thing. Legality is a whole other thing. Law exists in a non-commercial setting. Anything legal exists completely in a commercial setting. And when you are in a commercial setting, a legal setting, there has to be a legal contract. There has to be consent. There has to be agreements. There have to be, you can't, in a commercial setting, it would be like, how ridiculous would it be if you were driving home from wherever and you look in you see red and blue lights going on in your rearview mirror, and you look, and it's a Dunkin' Donuts car pulling you over. You're smiling because it's silly, right? Like Dunkin' Donuts officers would never pull you over because they know that once you leave Dunkin' Donuts, you're out of their jurisdiction. Okay. You wouldn't give that Dunkin' Donuts officer the time of day if that said, get out of the car, or give me your whatever. You would be like, you work for Dunkin' Donuts and I'm not at Dunkin'. So have a nice day. I'm going to carry on. Unfortunately, that exact same thing happens every time a police officer pulls someone over. What the police officers are working for a private corporate commercial entity called the town of whatever, and if you don't have an agreement with that town, then that commercial policy enforcement officer doesn't have any control over you, unlike the sheriffs, who are elected by the people, and they exist in a lawful scenario. And so there's a again, it's kind of one of these things where I think if more people understood that they bounce in and out of commercial and private scenarios all day long. When you are in your house, you are in a private setting. When you get into your car and you start driving, if you identify, if you are a commercial driver driving for, I don't know, a company, you're in a commercial setting. If you're just an individual going up to the store, in between your house and the store, you're in a private setting. Unless, of course, you identify yourself as a commercial entity by your driver's license, which no one really needs to have. That's a whole other topic, which we get into. But yeah, that's why, don't ever give your driver's license to a police officer that identifies you as a commercial entity, and now they have control of it. You've consented to giving them control over you. And there's bazillions of legal videos you can watch on that whole thing. We don't need to go down that rabbit hole. People have done. Yeah, but just recognizing that you are, the ability to recognize that you are in a commercial setting or a private setting has value to it. Because if you are, I don't know, I mean, look at what was done with the injections. That was all commercial. Those are commercial entities pushing it. It's a commercial product. It is, in some cases, some people were leveraged. Their jobs were leveraged to take these things, and that's a commercial setting. In order for any of those things to have been stand up in court, to stand up legally in court, there have to be the paperwork has to be in place. If I've got commercial authority over you, there's paperwork with both of our signatures on it that will show that. If there isn't, I think maybe that's the easiest way, or maybe the easiest takeaway for people to understand. Unless there is a piece of paper, a legal contract that has not just your signature, but the signature of the entity claiming to have control over you or authority over you, then there is no authority. It's all perceived. And a lot of what people go through every day, they are operating under perceived authority. And people are a lot more free than they realize.
Okay. Yeah, I don't think we'll go down that rabbit hole, but it sounds like you piqued some interest in topics that people could go research and dive a little bit deeper into.
Yeah.
But what I would love to get into with our remaining time is more of health. So why are we actually getting sicker in our modern world?
Inflammation. Tons and tons of inflammation caused by many, many different things. I mean, you've got everything is just sugar, just tons of just sugar. We could talk for hours on just the damage that sugar has done to the overall health of everyone. But all of this toxicity. So most of the food that people are, most of what people call food isn't food. I mean, I've heard this has been said a bunch of different ways, and I'm sure you've heard it a bunch of different ways too. But before you put something in your mouth and eat it, look at it and go, is this naturally found anywhere in the state that it's in, that I'm about to ingest? It's like a spoon of honey. You could go, well, yes, of course it is. This is its natural state. Okay, that's food. A Chips Ahoy chocolate chip double fudge cookie is found nowhere in nature, in that state, and so that's not food. That is a chemical concoction of stuff man-made put together, and probably more there's not probably there's definitely more artificial ingredients in there than there are anything natural. And anything that natural that might be in there, I guarantee you the water that was made to make those cookies was contaminated, toxic water. The wheat or the flour that was made to use those cookies was GMO'd, sprayed to death with, you know, whatever pesticides and fertilizers and such to even get to be wheat in the first place. So yeah, toxicity and inflammation, and a lot of the toxicity is causing the inflammation. I mean, it's everywhere. The water's contaminated, the food is garbage. I'm light is a whole other thing. Like we are, whether people want to accept it or not, we are living electrical batteries. We are water, we are light. There is natural electric activity taking place, and most people don't. Your average person probably hasn't consumed real natural living water, if ever. They probably, the majority of what they're calling food is not food. They are probably living most of their existence under artificial light. And the big thing is, being that we are electrical beings, anyone that's ever taken their shoes off and stepped onto a beach and just knows that feeling, you can feel how it's almost like a release. It's all the ions, you know. It's like we need to make an electrical connection with the ground in order to for many reasons, to discharge. I mean, we're building up charge all the time. We're living water bag antennas that are just attracting all. I mean, we're soaking in radiation. There's electrical radiation coming from everything. It's coming from every light, every wall socket, every appliance, every phone, every computer, every screen, everything. So we're soaking up all that charge. You got to discharge somehow. The only way you're ever going to discharge is to actually touch the ground. So people are walking around fully just soaking in radiation, never discharged. They've got crappy water in their body. They're eating crappy food. They're under crappy light. It's the perfect storm of just toxicity and inflammation, and the body is just screaming like, oh my gosh, you know, this is not how it's supposed to be. You watch it, you watch, I don't know if you have dogs or cats, but if you have a dog or a cat and they're allowed to go outside, look at what they do every day. They will go out in the morning and they will lay down on the ground, and they will most always be facing the sun. And they're, you know, they're doing what they know is right. They know that they need that light, they need that grounding, they need, you know, if you put two bowls of water out for a dog or a cat, and if one is like good, you know, distilled water that doesn't have any crap in it versus tap water, they're going to go to the distilled water every time. I think that's why a lot of dogs, honestly, I know this is a little side thing and don't want to get off on it, but I think that's why a lot of dogs will drink out of the toilet, because the toilet has like natural mineral, you know, it has natural stuff because of what we use a toilet for. There's a lot of that, you know. I mean, there's the dogs can sense that there's natural stuff in there. It might not be the most appetizing, you know, best, but they sense that there's natural stuff in that water versus the tap water that is sitting in their bowl, you know. And so, you know, a dog will almost drink water that has a little bit of like urine or whatever in it over tap water, because it knows at least it's getting a little bit of natural stuff, because, you know, I mean, urine is sterile, and I know it's gross and all that stuff, but I mean, it's not going to hurt the dog. The dogs will almost, you know, I mean, anyways, I think that just pay attention to animals and how they live their go through their day, and I don't know, we're in mass, we are suffering from lots of toxicity that causes lots of inflammation. And it's from so many different angles that it's hard for your average person to get their head around it. And and go, well, how do I get better? Well, you need to completely live differently. You need to eat differently. You need to drink differently. You need to everything. I mean, we could talk for an hour on just one of those verticals, whether we be it light, water, food,
Yep.
grounding, any of that stuff. They're massive topics, but we're not taught that. We're not taught it. We're not conditioned. We're not programmed that way. In fact, we're programmed. We are deceived into doing exactly the opposite. I mean, look at the, not to offend any. I know there are really, really good people who work in the hospital system, but a hospital's got to be one of the most unhealthy environments you could possibly put a person in. Crappy water, crappy light, no sunlight. No, I mean, no sunlight. In the event that you might get a room with a window, there's going to be UV coating on that glass, so you're not getting any of the good UV rays. Crappy food. I mean, if you go into any hospital anywhere, you'll see there are Coke machines, Pepsi machines, snack machines with garbage in there. I mean, it's frustrating when you know what is good and healthy, and you see setups like that. I want to stand out in front of a hospital and just stop people from going inside there. Go, you honestly, you'd be much better elsewhere. Let's just, I don't know. Sorry to get off on that little tangent, but
I love it. I'm like sitting here shaking my head the whole time because yeah, and it is overwhelming for people to hear, like, what do you mean I have to change everything? But that's just the matter of how it is today. And I love that you said learn from animals. So not only, I love the thing about the food examples and the water and like watching them go to the sun and ground. And then another one that I share with people a lot is, the emotional component of our bodies. Like if we hold on to emotions and traumas and things like that, it has a major impact for our health. We know that most diseases can be triggered by stress, right? In combination with all the other things you just listed, of course. But one thing that animals do is, let's say they get into a fight with each other, two dogs, two, I don't know, antelopes or something like that in the wild. And when they're done, they literally shake their bodies entirely. And that's a form of energetically and physically getting that nerves out of their system. And it's a simple thing, but that just animals, they know how to do it. They like you said, like they innately know how to do these things.
And I think we do too. I mean, you see that. I love that you brought up the animals shaking after like a confrontation. You actually see athletes do that. And I don't know that they know that they're doing it, but it is an instinctive thing. Like watch a basketball player before they take like a free throw, like especially a really intense, like if it's like changing, they're going to shake, they're shaking themselves off, or like kickers, and NFL kickers, if the clock is 2 seconds left and they got to make this field goal, they're shaking, they're doing this, and it's exactly what the animals do after a confrontation or after a stressful encounter. Because that's what it is. I mean, you are so right that stress, emotional stress, my gosh, that's probably the cause of easily half of what is wrong with people. Is just the physical manifestation of something mental and stressful that they are carrying around, and man, and to the point where, another rabbit hole, won't go down there, but I'll touch on it. If you tell, and this is where I get so mad at the medical industrial complex, if you tell somebody that they have something, if you tell someone that they have cancer, and that recipient of that news believes it, and even worse, is in fear because of it, their bodies will manifest things. Like if you tell someone that they've got something, the body will manifest something that, out of fear, just the fear. And I know that sounds crazy, but time and time you hear these stories about people being told that they had a tumor, and then all of a sudden they, I don't know. Do you remember the Chris Carr? She wrote a book years ago called Crazy Sexy Cancer.
I haven't read that one. I've read The Metabolic Approach to Cancer, which is another great book.
I just bring her up because she was just a great story. She's young professional, just killing it, just going 100 miles an hour, just kicking life's ass. And then she gets told that she's got cancer, and her response to that news was, and I love this, I'm paraphrasing, I'm not doing her justice, but basically her response was, I don't have time for that. And she's like, she treated it like another thing on her to-do list. And she just like, well, if I got this, then I'm going to change some things. And she just added it to her to-do list. And, her tumors that developed or whatever ended up going away. And it's like, I think it's up here. It's not, I know it sounds wacky, but it's not all physical. So like we are our bodies. And if I tell myself that my foot hurts, my foot's going to start hurting. It's that's not wacky. It's not crazy. It's the same thing that we use to, we do that same thing in other ways. It's like that, the athletes, it's like they have to in their mind go, I'm going to make that shot. I'm going to make that field goal. I'm going to do it. They're talking themselves into what is going to manifest. And if you can do that externally, you can do it internally too. And I think a lot of damage gets done internally by just thoughts and fears.
No, it's not wacky. And if anyone wants to hear me and Shay Leonard dive into this topic, I just did a podcast a couple days ago, so it'll be 2 episodes before this, but we talk all about the placebo effect, and we give tons of scientific studies and like real world examples of exactly how the mind is manifesting all these things. So if anybody wants to learn more about that, we won't dive into it right now, but it's 100% real and something to definitely pay attention to. So yeah, it's incredible what the human body can create and manifest.
Yeah, both good and bad,
Yeah.
And I think just kind of like knowing that dynamic exists is a big step for people. It's just like knowing that deception exists, or knowing that programming exists, or I mean, they literally, in the case of programming, they call it programming.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, every network has its programming, and it's like, and we line up for it, and we just it's like a baby to a mother's teat. We just take it in and here, program me some more.
Yeah. Yeah. And you brought up grounding and the electrical body and all that. And I always use the example of, if you think about people who live in Hawaii or on islands, and how we always think of these people as, oh, they're island people, they're always really relaxed and like, island time and slow. It's because they are relaxed. Their feet are in the sand all the time. Their body is recharged and regenerized.
There's no stress. There's much
yes,
less stress.
they have sunshine.
Sunshine. They're grounded. The water that they're exposing themselves to, both taking in internally and soaking in and stuff, is probably much better quality. If you're living on an island, you're probably eating a little better. Just because you're probably eating real, food. Food from the earth, be it plants or animals, and I mean, I don't know, it blows me away. And I think, I don't mean to be a downer, but I think 2023, we're going to see a lot more of this. When your average person can't go to the store to get their food, that's going to be, I mean, we watched a couple of years ago, people lose their mind because they couldn't get toilet paper. Imagine what is going to happen when they can't get things that are I mean, let's be honest, you don't need toilet paper. There are other options there, but like what happens when you can't get some like staple consumables? What happens when you can't get rice or pasta or chicken or beef or that? And I've got 4 of the 5 red pill authors are in the UK. I'm the only one that's not. I'm the only one in the US, and they're already seeing it. They've been living that reality for a year or more, where you just don't go into the store like you used to and buy bacon. It's just not there anymore. And that dynamic hasn't hit the US yet, but I don't know, my rule of thumb is pay attention to what is happening in the UK, and because the UK seems to be like a beta testing ground for status narratives and stuff. And they're anywhere from 3 to 6 months ahead of like what we will be experiencing here in the States. So I don't know. I think 2023 is going to be a very exciting year, but there's going to be a lot of change, and I don't think that all the change is going to be easy for a lot of what I will call normies. But those of us that have been thinking outside the corporate narratives are it's not going to be easy for us either, but we won't be as surprised by it. But when simple things like bank cards stop working, or I can't go to the store to get anything I want at any time I want, that those are big deals. And I don't know, I think it would be wise for everyone to just think that through and go, what if you couldn't get water? I mean, a lot of people can't even get a glass of water without some sort of corporate third party involvement, and unless you have a well. I've got a well. That was something I did years ago. It's like I'm an old punk rock skateboard, kid, and I've always been like, me, individual. I don't need anybody, and it was like I don't know, it's 2017 when I was like, what, I've been thinking of myself as this like individual guys my whole life. Is like, I can't even get a glass of water without the freaking corporate government involvement. They're piping it into my house, and it made me mad. And so the very next thing I did was we dug a well, and nice. I got my own water. But what if there's a lot of people out there that can't get their own water? And that's, what if you can't get water? What if you can't get meat? What if you can't get produce? What if you can't get power? And we need to be, I don't know. I wish we were trained as children. I wish that's what schooling was to teach people how to feed yourself, how to give yourself water, how to build shelter, how to make yourself a self-sufficient, healthy, stress-free human, as opposed to completely dependent upon the corporate structure corporate slave, which is what a lot of us are.
Yep. That's why I plan on homeschooling when I have kids, and I'm going to teach them all the things that I think like you're talking about and more. So it's a crazy world that we live in. I know we're running out of time right now. Do you have a little bit extra time to answer a couple more questions?
Absolutely.
Okay. Yeah. Awesome. Because I would love to just touch on like, how did we get here? Like, how did healthcare become the largest business in our developed world? What was that story of maybe like the Rockefeller and Andrew Carnegie creation in this whole craziness that we're dealing with?
Greed. I mean, just greed. And I think there are two types of people in the world. There is what I call the control group, and there are those who want to be controlled. I mean, there's a lot of comfort in being controlled. A lot of people like to be controlled. And also within that group, there are the people that want to control. And so you've got this group of people over here that want to be controlled, and there's the people that are more than happy to control them. And then the other group is the rest of us that aren't that. And Rockefeller in particular, all you have to do is look at photographs of that man, and you can see the eyes. You can just see the darkness in those eyes. And his father was literally a snake oil salesman. I mean, literally a snake oil salesman. And it was very intentional. I mean, he went in aggressively because he had all of the, he had the money because of the steel and the railroad and all of that. I mean, it was just a bloodthirsty quest for power and control, and right down to the fact where, I mean, literally put his people on the board of every university known, and they control the universities, which teach the narratives that, like, you can't be a medical professional without going through their universities to get their certification to work in their hospitals, and push their curriculum and their narratives. And it's strategically, it's beautiful strategy. I mean, man, it's effective. It's being used for the worst of reasons, but I do believe that, you asked how did we get there. I think that it's human nature to be almost like naively trustworthy. It's really hard for and I'm not talking about surface level trust. I mean, I know there's, lots of people have been burned by significant others or spouses or whatever. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about, like, I think most of us want to believe that the average person on the street coming up to them is good. And so there is a built-in naivete to us, and it's really easy to control people. It really, really is. Look at what happened in 2020. It's really easy. I mean, it got visual. You could see the people who wanted to be controlled. They had masks on. They were literally going, here, I'm one of them. I'm wanting to, I mean, I know that they're not thinking of it that way, going, I want to be controlled, but that's what they were doing. I mean, if you look at the history of masking in the military, I mean, the military has been masking prisoners, since the military has existed. And so, like, the whole masking thing was a really great visual. You could see it. You could walk around and you could go, look at how many people are willingly being controlled. And so that would be my answer, is how we got here. We are trusting and naive by nature. It's uncomfortable for a lot of us to question and say no, and we don't want to feel like we're being the stick in the mud, the odd person out, going, oh, don't do that, which I've always loved being that guy. I like that. But I know I'm not the norm. That is just something that is unique to the way I'm wired. But man, people love to be controlled. People love to control, and there's never a shortage of those that want to control and those that want to be controlled. And again, look at the events of 2020. I mean, you don't even have to try that hard, and people will line up and do what they're told, whatever that is. And so I think that's how we got there. Is there's never a shortage of people seeking power and control. It's a drug, man. I mean, I'm sure, I'm sure you as a female have seen more than your fair share of examples of men who just love control. They love controlling women.
Sadly.
No, but I mean, I have too. I mean, I'm not exactly, proud of all of my species,
Yeah.
I mean, but I mean, like, there are some people that they're driven by it. They are absolutely driven by it. And if you encounter someone, and I've had business partners and professional associates who, like, they're driven by control, and I can tell within the first hour of me coexisting with them whether it's going to work or not, because they can tell that they're not. I'm not, again, I don't mean this to sound arrogant, but I mean, within an hour of time, you're going to know that I'm not the type of person that's going to be easily controlled.
Mm-hmm.
If you and I have a relationship, a professional relationship, and over time you've proven to me, man, Rachel's a badass leader. She's organized. I mean, she can move the needle. Then at some point I might willingly consent and go, man, I will consent, and I'll have Rachel lead us. If Rachel's the leader of the company, I'll follow, because she's proven to me she's got the skills and the abilities to do that. But no, man, I really do think it all comes down to, there's just this bloodthirsty desire to control and be controlled, and that's how we got here, because there's enough of us that fall into that trap.
Yeah. And then I think obviously you did mention money, right? And money is you gave this one example in the book. Well, you gave a few examples, but one was like talking about someone who discovered using borax for rheumatoid arthritis. And, it's like, why didn't anybody know about that solution? Well, borax doesn't cost any money. It's cheap. But you can make billions of dollars off of arthritis medications, right? And then you also mentioned that there was a sentence that was like, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and the World Health Organization and pharmaceutical companies all have financial links to the media, to the educational institutions, to the newspapers. So it's like, why don't we see natural holistic care in the media? Because they don't have any money in the media.
And that is, if you look at anything that we're not supposed to be doing, it's always profit driven. I mean, a lot of, you could take something really easy like cannabis or whatever. It's like it was never about it being a drug or it being dangerous, or it was always about two things. That the textile industry, one, you've got this plant that can just dominate paper and cloth, the already established paper and cloth scenarios that are, those companies are dug in and they've got that. But I think even more more powerful than that is, why do people take pharmaceuticals? They either take it to help them sleep, pain, or stress and anxiety. Those are really the three. I mean, I know there are others, but those are the three main reasons why people take pharmaceuticals. And here you have this plant that most people could grow in their backyard for free, and it deals with, you're going to sleep, you're not going to have stress, your pain's going to go away because it's an anti-inflammatory, back to inflammation again. And so there's no money in it. There's just no money in it. And right now, you staying on the topic of cannabis, now there is, just like the corporate structure always does, they will co-opt and occult anything natural and good, and they will corrupt it and sell it back to you in a faker version. And so, that's what they've done that with just about everything. Look at what they've done with something as simple as corn. Try to find natural corn anymore. It's really hard. You need to literally know a farmer who lives a safe distance away from any other corn farmer that isn't growing GMO'd corn. Because if he's close to another farmer growing GMO'd corn, his corn's going to get, he or her corn's going to get pollinated, and then that corn is GMO'd now. And so, it's like we don't even have real, corn's been co-opted and sold back to us as fake corn. Tomatoes have been co-opted and sold back to us as fake tomatoes. I mean, that's what they do. And there's usually money, way more money in the co-opting and selling us back the faker, less superior version of something than just allowing the natural version of whatever it is to be. I've said this to anyone that'll listen. Distilled water is probably one of the cheapest medicines that you can buy. You can go into any grocery store and buy a gallon of distilled water for cheaper than you can get cheap soda. And I mean, if just the real basics of distilled water, I mean, distilled water is negatively charged. Anything that's in your body that is a non-dissolved, inorganic solid is positively charged. So just drinking distilled water is going to, the water molecules you're going to have this negative charge of the distilled water binding with the positive charge of the inorganic, non-dissolved solids. And they're going to bind and you're going to pee or sweat it out, versus those non-dissolved solids piling up over time and turning into stones of some sort or blockages of some sort. And it's like, but there's no money in distilled water. It's literally cheaper than the crappiest of all sodas, but there's no money in it. And so you're never going to see corporate structure pushing things that there isn't any money in, because corporations only have one objective, and that is to be profitable. And it's a self-perpetuating entity. It doesn't have corporations don't have feelings. Corporations don't have emotions. Corporations exist to keep existing, and the only way they can keep existing is to be profitable. And so it's never anyone expecting corporations to behave in a way that is thoughtful or caring or loving, or you're fooling yourself. You're talking about entities that exist on paper, and yes, there's real people behind them, but at the end of the day, a corporation's only objective is to be profitable, period. It's business 101.
Well, I think we'll wrap it up here. But I do have one question that I always ask all my guests,
Yeah.
which is if you could leave the listeners with one tip, maybe they could implement it today or sometime later this week that could help them live a healthier, happier life, what would you tell them to do?
Well, it wouldn't just be one tip, but it would be touching on something that we've already talked about is please just at least entertain the thought of paying attention to your water, to your light, and to the fact that you need to discharge. You are you are a living, breathing, walking electrical battery. And a battery can only work if it is connected to a power source, and you need to touch the ground. And I'm not talking in a hippie sense. I'm just talking, it's animal. Look at any animal, look at the pads on the bottom of the feet. Those aren't there for fashion reasons. Those are connection points. Those are, the hair doesn't, the hair doesn't conduct, but those pads are very conductive. And so that's why animals have padded pads on the bottom of their paws and stuff. So pay attention to your water. You'd never pour tap water into an aquarium. Why? Because it would kill the fish. It would kill the fish. It's probably killing what's inside your gut and in your body, because what's inside your body is way more, it's a more delicate ecosystem than a fish tank. And so don't, pay attention to your water, pay attention to your light, pay attention to when the last time it was that your skin actually touched the ground. And I think those three things, if more people just did those three things, and they're super simple to do, and they don't cost anything, they don't cost anything. Just, and I would add one more thing, learn about the circadian rhythm. It's how all life functions. It's the natural light cycle of the day. Plants live by it, animals live by it, and humans used to live by it before people like the Rockefellers and such came in and got us living. We almost live like an insect-like in existence. We live in these hives. We live inside these little, look at an apartment buildings always look like beehives to me. Everybody just is in their little comb, and nobody's touching the ground. Nobody's got real light. The water's crappy. The food's crappy. It's so just, I think those are really, really simple things that anyone can do. And if you want to know more about that kind of stuff, there's no, this is just a sincere knowledge share. Just go to the Red Pill Revolution, put the in there, the Red Pill Revolution /guide. And we've put together a guide of 10 steps that really anyone could do to take just control over themselves and their health. And I mean, health is not just it's not just one topic. I mean, health is health is your existence. And it's not just about food. It's not just about water. It's not just about light. It's not just about grounding. It's not just about mental. It's all of that stuff. We have to be well balanced, and we have to be health in general is balance. And so many of us are just out of balance and in a lot of those categories. And the best thing we can do is do our best to bring ourselves in balance. And I have found, I'll leave it at this, I have found that most of the things that will bring you back into balance, reduce toxicity, reduce inflammation, most of those things are not found in a store behind a price tag. A lot of them exist naturally, and they don't cost money. You just need to change the way you think and the way that you live. And that's hard for a lot of people, but you're not going to get better until you do.
Yep. It's a lot of that stuff is free, like you said, and that's amazing. You just have to go out and do it and learn a little bit more about it.
Just have to do it.
Yeah. I also have a Facebook group. It's the Natural Health Rising Facebook group, and I created a free course in there so anybody can go in and get it. And it's about sleep. And so I teach about the circadian rhythm a little bit and sunlight and all that kind of stuff. So people can go get that. They can go, we'll put the link, the Red Pill Revolution guide in the show notes, your website, your Facebook, all the things there as well, the book, so people can learn more about that. But this has been a super enlightening and amazing conversation. So thank you so much for being on the show, John.
Oh, thanks, Rachel. I've enjoyed it, and let's do it again if you ever want to.
That sounds good.
Sounds good. Take care.
Thanks for watching the episode. I really hope you enjoyed it. And if you did, make sure that you like the video and leave a comment and share it with a friend who really needs to hear it. Because when you share this information, you're also going to help other people level up their health. And if you or somebody else you know wants to work on their health and they're looking for a functional medicine practitioner, feel free to reach out to me to apply to work together. Thanks for watching, and keep striving to become your healthiest, happiest self.